including rape at very young ages. They believe hundreds more could have suffered a similar fate.
And this is a legacy, this, I tell you. You have no idea how big this is, and I really do hope you take me seriously, because all us out there, we've all been crying the last week. It's not fair, is it? And we didn't ask for this.
Farmers joined the fray as demonstrations grow in South Korea against President Park, who's accused of corruption. The struggle to contain wildfires in Israel. Police arrest 12 people suspected of arson. That's all coming up here on Impact. It's been a week of revelations that have shocked British football. After one former player stepped forward to declare he'd been sexually abused as a boy by his coach, more have decided it's time to tell their story. 7 footballers have now gone public, telling us about abuse they suffered in the sports youth system during the 1980s and 1990s. 2 of the players gave harrowing accounts to the BBC's Victoria Derbyshire programme, as our sports correspondent Natalie Perks reports.
I've got to come forward and help everybody.
Chris Unsworth had never told his story before, not to a single soul. But today he finally told the harrowing tale he'd tried to bury. A story of how serial paedophile coach Barry Bennell had started raping him at the age of 9.
I didn't know what was going on, to be fair. I knew where I wanted to get, and I thought, this is obviously what I've got to go through.
Did you know it was wrong? What he was doing was wrong?
I knew it was wrong, but I just went with it. Just went with it.
Barry Bennell has been jailed 3 times for child sexual abuse. He described himself as a monster in court papers in 2015. But speaking to the BBC in 1991, he was a picture of professionalism.
We really work the kids up, they're learning all the time. And we do a lot of talking to, as well as showing them their skills and explaining the game to them. But we explain that there's more to it than just coming here 1 hour a week.
He's permanently suspended from football. Yesterday, police removed a dog and property from his house in Milton Keynes. It's been a tough week for English football since Andy Woodward waived his anonymity to reveal the abuse he suffered at the hands of Bennell. Now 6 other players have come forward to allege abuse, including an unnamed player in today's Guardian newspaper, who claims he was abused by convicted paedophile youth coach George Ormond while he was at Newcastle United. It shows the story is potentially spreading wider than just one coach, wider than just one area. Indeed, for Jason Dunford, another of the players to have suffered at the hands of Bennell, this feels like the tip of the iceberg.
Is this as big as Savile?
I think Savile looks like a choir boy compared to this fella and what's going on right now. Let me tell you.
And that particular guy is the person that can make it happen or not, in your head. And for some of the lads, I think Barry was that person. You know, if I don't toe the line, if I don't do what he says maybe, then maybe I'll be dropped, maybe I won't be footballer.
The obvious question now is, could football have done more?
Is it feasible that other adults at the time really didn't know what was happening?
Impossible. And there was people at those football clubs that had duty to look after the welfare of young boys coming through their system. This is their potential future stars, and their future stars are being sexually abused and sexually assaulted by a member of their staff.
Crewe Alexandra's director of football and former manager Dario Gradi released a statement yesterday saying no one at the club knew of Bennell's crimes until 1994, when he was arrested in America.
I was the same as every boy in this settee. I had a dream of being a footballer, and every child who has a dream, to me, should be able to try and achieve that dream without having to go through sexual abuse or being around sexual predators.
For the man whose story started this, Andy Woodward, some sense of relief.
Last week I was on here, I was on my own, and I was so scared, but I knew that they were here. I've got, honest to God, Victoria, I can't thank the public enough, and the media, and more importantly, the lads for backing me up, you know. I'm just totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
One man's heartbreak, leading others to finally feel able to share their torment. Natalie Perks, BBC News.
Well, with me now, and watching that report with great sympathy, empathy, is abuse survivor Tom Perry, who founded the organisation Mandate Now, which calls for mandatory reporting of child abuse. Tom, I have to ask you first to explain to us what that means in practice.
In essence, at the moment, everybody who works with children in what are defined as regulated activities, this is all part of the legislative framework, and this includes sports, schools, health centres, healthcare. There is an expectation that they will report suspicions of abuse. The only problem is with this is that it is an expectation, and they have to be a whistleblower, because there is nothing in law that requires them to report. So this puts the burden completely on the shoulders of the person doing the reporting. And the biggest fear of people doing reporting is being wrong. So therefore it is easier not to report than to report, because nobody is required to. It's a voluntary arrangement. We call it discretionary reporting, not a phraseology that the government likes. But that's what it is. It's discretionary. You can choose to, or you can choose not to report.
And there's a lot of pressures that go against that. For example, if you say to your manager, something strange could be going on, they think of the reputation of the institution.
You've got it. There's reputational protection. But there's something that happens actually even before that, and that is something called gaze aversion. It's easier to look away than report. And then if you do decide to report, then you're reporting it up, okay, as a whistleblower, to your boss, and you're taking the worst news nobody wants to hear to the very people who most don't want to hear it and who are then not obliged to report it. That is a system designed to fail, and the government knows it.
And other governments have changed their systems.
Yes.
I mean, I know when we were chatting before, you said Australia is a great example of where it works.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are lots of people that say, you know, oh, it doesn't work for this particular reason. It's like the peas stopping this, you know, great concrete slab from rolling down the hill. Oh, we can't have it because of this. Well, this is just nonsense. In Australia, it's working incredibly well. Think of this. Here we have in this country at the moment, we have the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. In Northern Ireland, they've got the Hart inquiry going on about child abuse. Scotland has got an inquiry about child abuse. Australia has an inquiry which is just completing, but Australia, having discovered all the failures, switched to mandatory reporting in each state, okay, some years ago. Okay, I think the last state to change was in 2009, so they now have mandatory reporting. Canada had a discretionary reporting, okay, and all these systems that all these countries adopted were authored in Whitehall, and they failed. And the States has also gone mandatory reporting. That had discretionary reporting.
And when you look at countries that have adopted it, whether it's Australia or the States, or many Asian countries, for example, I suppose what you might see first is statistically it looks as if incidences of abuse are going up because people are voicing their suspicions. But there's evidence, do you see that it works?
We have absolute evidence, actually, and we have the hard data. The one thing that we don't get in this country is hard data. It's a data vacuum in this country. I don't know why. It's quite fascinating. But you go to Australia and the data is there. And the data actually tells us this. Very interesting study has just been done in Western Australia by Professor Ben Matthews of the Australian Institute of Technology. He's the world's leader on mandatory reporting, okay, and its effects. And Western Australia, it having been introduced, there was a 7-year study with data from 3 years pre-mandatory reporting and 4 years post. When you introduce mandatory reporting in these regulated activities, education, healthcare, police, they introduce it to us there as well. What you tend to find is that the number of referrals that are then made to triage more than doubles. And interestingly, the number of substantiations travel in absolute proportion with pre-mandatory reporting levels. So you're placing more children into safety earlier, and that's what we want.
And Tom, just a final thought. We have heard some of those very affected who are speaking out for the first time saying there are more people out there who are abused as boys in the system, perhaps hundreds. Do you think that's possibly true?
I fear that's probably the case. We don't speak. And the biggest reason why we don't speak is because many of us, not all of us, but most of us, feel complicit. And we see our abusers get very close to our parents, and that cuts you off from your mother, your father. It breaks the parental bond, and we feel complicit. Why on earth is anybody going to speak as a child faced with that? The burden is too great.
Tom Perry, thank you so much for coming into the studio. Thank you.